And you all will have to approve that. And we'll see if Henry can get his monitor on.
Now I'm going to disconnect and try to reconnect.
What you think, Henry? You think you can get it?
No, I mean, I can hear you.
Okay, that's good. I can hear you.
Thank you. I'm definitely here.
Okay, I know you're here.
But we may not see me tonight. I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
Okay, I'll let you kind of continue to work on it. And
Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm going to go ahead and start class. Thank you all very much for signing on just a little early. That's always a good time to make sure that microphones and cameras and all that are working. I hope you have a good time tonight and for the next 4 weeks. This is master class, and we're going to work on flower photography for the next 4 weeks. For Susan and Lexi, who are also in my master class on macro photography, you'll notice a little bit of overlap and a little bit of the same homework assignments. But everybody else, I hope that this is all new for you. And what we do in the master class is this is just a bit of a deeper dive into one aspect of photography and with homework, which makes it interesting because then you're challenged a little bit, I hope. And then at the same time, you have to present your work to your fellow students. It gives us a great chance to learn from each other and share from each other's information and share from each other's skills. So there's a lot of learning that goes in a class like this, and I hope that you enjoy it. Do not ever think of it as, a college course where you're going to pass or fail or anything like that. Don't let it stress you out. If you don't get the homework, then don't worry about it. But if you do get the homework, I think it makes class just a whole lot more fun. So don't let it interrupt your personal life unless that's just the way you are and you want to do that. Okay. So if you want an excuse for not tending to regular life, then this is maybe a good excuse for that. So everybody got your handout, correct?
Yes.
Yes, good. And you are more than welcome, unless you've got barking dogs or something like that, you're more than welcome to leave your microphone on. I don't think it'll disturb anything. And then that way, when you need to ask questions, you can ask questions whenever you want to. So always feel free to interrupt me and ask questions if you feel like you need to. So flower photography. It all depends on what you're trying to achieve, because flower photography gives you the ability to go off into, the realms of creativity where you're playing around with shapes and patterns and colors and things like that. But flower photography also allows you to go into the realm of, for instance, insect photography or butterflies or bees. I started working on bees last summer, and I can't wait to continue on bees throughout the rest of this year also. So flower photography allows you to branch out in various different directions. It doesn't have to be just one thing in flower photography. It can be pretty much what you want. So it can be documenting the wildflowers that are coming up in the next months or so throughout the Texas region. It could be from documenting wildflowers to creating art. Flower photography can be pretty much anything. And so that's where you can bring your own expertise to what flower photography is. Humans have always had this interest in flowers and gardens. And if we go back into some of our more ancient art, you see that we've got this Chinese painting where it's, You know, obviously it's people in the garden, but the emphasis there is on this lush garden and this beautiful garden. And that's going back to 1295. Over on the right-hand side, you've got the Persian garden. And if you've ever traveled to any of the Arab countries that have that Persian influence and that Ottoman Empire influence, you know that those gardens are you know, a major part of their life. Very intricate, lots and lots of detailed patterns, repeated shapes, smells, water trickling, that type of thing. So we've always had this love of these flowers and these gardens. Coming into our religious art, this one's dating back to 1470, and you notice the background is all lovely roses in there. And so we've got, you know, the basic ordinary religious painting, but then we've got that beautiful background that pulls in all these lush roses. And then even Leonardo da Vinci in 1483 was sketching flowers. So the same as we might feel a need to go out and photograph flowers. I was working on my hyacinths today because the hyacinths are blooming in my yard. But Da Vinci was doing the same thing. He was sketching these flowers that were growing around the Venice area. And then here's one of my favorite artists, Durer, is painting cowslips in 1526. And Durer is known for his extreme attention to detail. And, you know, this is during that age of discovery when artists were really, really bringing out every single minute detail that they could find in flowers as we were dissecting them and learning about them and studying them. And then continuing on 1590s, this is that age of discovery. So 1492, when Christopher Columbus started sailing around the, you know, to the west, then as each one of these ships were coming back, they were bringing new fruits and they were bringing vegetables and they were bringing birds and they were bringing all kinds of things from their age of, you know, time of discovery. And here you see that we've got some widow birds, probably out of Africa on a fig tree. And then as we started progressing along, here we are at 1607, and this artist has almost created a photograph. And I love this style. I've always been mesmerized by it. I love the title too, A Still Life of Flowers in a Glass Flask on a Marble Ledge, flanked by a red admiral butterfly and lizard. Love that title. Nothing short about that at all. And if he didn't give you the lizard in the title, you may not even notice the lizard in the bottom right-hand corner. But by 1607, the artist had gotten to the point where really this is almost a photograph. This is just totally realistic in the way that it looks. And then I come a little bit further into this in 1640. This is a female artist, Giovanna, and she was painting flowers, which is very fitting for a female artist, and in the Venice area. And look at the detail that she has on these glass vases, where you've got the reflection of the windows in there. And those are exactly like the reflections we would have in a photograph. And of course, I would be putting some sort of screen on that window or putting some sort of diffuser between the vase and the window, trying to get rid of that reflection. But she did it in such a beautiful way. And she was a fairly famous flower painter. And you look at all the details. We've got tulips in here and all kinds of other flowers like the daffodil that look familiar. But we're getting to that really, really realistic era of painting and bringing out all the detail in these lovely flowers. And this isn't just happening in Europe. So here's a painter from the Philippines in 1877. And he is painting the gardens of the Philippines and the nature in the Philippines with as much detail as we're seeing in any of the other artists, you know, just showing us the beautiful vegetation that's there. And then, of course, we start getting to the Impressionistic era. And Susan, you were telling me that you went to the Monet Gardens and did some photography there, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. And so we're getting into the now we move into the late 1800s where we start getting into the Impressionistic era. And this is when we got a lot of Monet doing his flowers. Van Gogh, of course, did these sunflowers that are so famous. And all kinds of different sunflowers that Van Gogh was doing. And we know exactly what kind of flower it is. We know what it feels like. And we can almost reach out and touch it. Even though it's impressionistic, it's still very realistic. And then once we get to the 20s, we get into photography. And this is where we start seeing the beautiful early 20s gelatin prints of different kinds of flowers that we might have. And those, of course, influence us and what we're doing and what we're trying to create and the types of photographs that we're trying to create. So we've been in this as humans for a very long time. The flowers just speak to us, they call out to us, and they create these fabulous subjects for us to do. So your basics still apply. And just to reiterate on this with your handout, your basics, your f-stop controls how much of your background we see and how much of your background we don't see. Why we want that background to be blurry is because the human eye does not look at whatever is blurry. It doesn't get distracted by what's blurry. It ignores what's blurry and only looks at what is in focus. The further your background is away from your subject, the more you can blow it out of focus. So you position your subject 8, 10, 15 feet away from your background, and the more you can blow it out of focus. So your f-stop controls how much we can isolate our subject from our background. F4 or F5 right here. But then here, trying to get a little bit more depth of field on that blue bonnet. This one, those Aggie blue bonnets, it was created at A&M to give us the burgundy color. A little bit more depth of field on this one. So this one giving us maybe an F8 or something like that. And you notice that I'm also shooting through the other blue bonnets that are in front of it to put that blurry blue bonnet in the front. So F8, once again, finding a subject that's 8 or 10 feet away from its surrounding subject so that we can blow everything out of focus. And then if you want to show the entire garden, then that would be your F22. So the bigger the number on the f-stop, the more stuff is going to be in focus. The smaller the number on the f-stop, the less stuff is going to be in focus. Everybody got f-stop? Yeah, or feel comfortable with your f-stops? And then we need to make sure that we've got a shutter speed that's stopping our subject. So if we're photographing something like this rose, and it's outside and it's got any sort of movement to it, then we have to make sure we've also got a shutter speed that'll stop the movement. So in that basic photography class that I taught, I talk about a gentle breeze is we need a 15th of a second to stop something that's moving in a gentle breeze. 60th of a second is what we need for something that's just sitting still. But if we've got more movement to it, then we need 250 or 500th of a second shutter speed. That might mean as we get a faster shutter speed that we can't get the f-stop we want. So it's that balancing act. And then we've got to pull the ISO up. It's always that balancing act, but the light meter needs to stay in the middle so that we're not overexposing our subjects. And then also, just going back to that basic, we need to make sure that we focus where we want the human eye to go. So with all the cameras that we're using now, they'll autofocus. If you're using mirrorless, then it'll choose something, and then we have to make sure that we're getting the right subject. But when you're focusing, think about this is where I want the human eye to go. So wherever we focus is where we want the human eye to go. So for me in this photograph, even though the camera might have tried to focus on those petals right there, for me, I want the human eye, I want the viewer's eye to go to the raindrop. That's where I want the viewer's eye to go. So think about where you put your focus point, because we enter at the focus point. So whatever your photograph is, that most focused part is where the human eye enters. We'll talk about some other ways the human eye enters, but wherever you want the human eye to really look, that's where you need to have your focus point. So make sure you slow down, get calm, have that camera on a tripod if you need to, and figure out exactly how to get the focus point where you want it. Does everybody know how to move your focus point around on your camera? Everybody know how to get it right where you want it to be? Yeah. So for me on the Canon camera, I'm pushing the topmost right-hand button on the back, and then I'm moving my focus point around. Or if you're using your back screen, using your touch screen, if you want to do that way. But making sure that you can move that focus point exactly where you need it to get your subject in focus. And then that subject also, even if it's a big field, do we put the focus a little further out, use a shallow f-stop? So this is an f8 with a telephoto lens, uses shallow f-stop, let the foreground be out of focus, let the background be out of focus. Or do we move the focus point to the front and let the blue bonnets in the front be out of focus and let everything fall out of focus from there on? It's just your choice. You know, this is your art. This is what you're creating. So where you put your focus point, whether you want to create a photo that looks like that or whether you want to create a photo that looks like that, where you put your focus point is where you want the eye to enter. So you're sort of saying, enter right here. And let me take you on the journey through the rest of the photograph. So wherever that focus point is where they're going to, human eye is going to enter. You can use any lens you want, and that's the beautiful thing. So here's flower photography done with a super wide angle lens. So this is your 16 to 35 millimeter lens. So this is the lens that I would use for seascapes and landscapes and, you know, even night sky photography. But you can still do garden photography with this as well. And you can still do flower photography with it. So it doesn't have to be a set lens. You can use any lens that you want to. In your flower photography. 24 to 105, one of my favorite lenses to use. And, you know, here we get a little wider field of view, not as wide as the previous one. This is Yves Saint Laurent's garden in Marrakesh, Morocco, and everything is blue and yellow throughout the entire garden. And it is just absolutely amazing to walk through there and, you know, water tinkling all over the place, but everything is blue and yellow. Which when we start talking about the color wheel, you'll see blue and yellow are primary colors together. But this is a magnificent garden, absolutely wonderful place to visit. You can use that 70 to 300 millimeter lens. Same thing. So it doesn't have to be just one particular lens that you would use for your flower photography. You can use all the way from the wide angle to the medium telephoto. Or one of my favorite lenses for flower photography is the 70 to 200. Anybody else have this one? 70 to 200? No. And Canon makes them, Nikon makes them, Olympus, Sony, everybody makes one. And the 70 to 200, 2.8 is a little bit on the heavier side. 70 to 200 f4 for me is exactly the right size. It's a fairly small lens, about so big, but it allows me not to have to get into the flower bed. Or if I'm doing butterflies with it, allows me not to have to disturb the butterflies. So it's a beautiful lens. And then all of these lenses, Canon, Nikon, Sony, or Olympus, all of these lenses also have a beautiful blown out background on them. So they get that beautiful bokeh, that just pureness of that background. And this, once again, is a 70 to 200 f4 lens. You can also get it at 2.8, just a little heavier and a little bit more expensive. So I like the f4 lens. And then leading you to homework assignment tonight, how close can your lens focus? So one of the things that I like to get people to understand is with each lens you own, how close will it focus? And Lexi and Susan, I know you all did this same exercise in macro photography, but you're going to have to do it again in flower photography. But why this is so important is a lot of times when people go to photograph, they stay human distance apart, human personal distance. Human personal distance is usually about 3 feet. We don't usually get closer to each other than 3 feet unless we know each other really well. So people, when they're photographing, also tend to stay away from the flower by about 3 feet. Well, if your lens focuses to 9 inches, you're missing a whole lot of stuff going on between that 9 inches and that whole 3 feet. So with each one of your lenses, one of your homework assignments is I want you to know how close you can get with each one of your lenses. Does everybody have interchangeable lenses, or anybody working with just a one-piece unit? Everybody have
I have
Yeah.
both cameras. I have
That's
an
right.
interchangeable lens camera, and I have a bridge camera that has just one lens.
Just one lens, so you
Well,
can't
it's a
take it on
zoom
and
lens.
off.
No, it's a zoom lens.
Yeah, it just zooms in and out. Correct.
Right.
Yeah. Anybody else have a camera that only has a fixed lens on it? No? Okay. Good. Okay, so you're changing lenses on your cameras. It's just important to know with each one of your lenses how close you can get. Now, this isn't just for flower photography or macro photography. I see it all the time in my bird tours when we're photographing birds. People don't really realize how close they can get with one of their lenses. So my 100 to 500 millimeter lens that I use for birds also is a fabulous flower lens because it can get so close. And so it's just understanding how close you can get with each one of the lenses that you own. And each one of your lenses has a minimum focusing distance. It should be on the barrel of your lens. So it'll tell you exactly how close that lens can get. So by getting close, we're going to create a bit more interesting photographs than if we stand a little bit further back. So we're trying to I like to get as close as I possibly can for my subjects. Questions on getting close? No? Okay. So now we're on the color wheel, and you've probably seen the color wheel all over the place, and we'll do some more deep diving into the color wheel. But where the color wheel comes in really handy is on your photographs. And I've given this to you on your handout. On your photographs or any work of art, the human eye goes to the white area of the frame first. And then from the white area, the human eye goes to the primary colors. Primary colors, yellow, red, and blue. So when we, as humans, look at a photograph or a piece of art, we go to white first, and then from white, we go to red or yellow or blue. We look at the primary colors first. And then from there, barring any of those colors, then we go to the greens and the oranges and the purples. So then we go to the greens and the oranges and the purples. Now on the color wheel, yellow and red primary colors, they make orange when we mix them together. We learned this a long, long time ago. Yellow and blue, when we mix it together, we get green. And then when we mix, when we mix blue and red together, then we get violet. So that's what the color wheel is showing us. If we mix a little bit more yellow, then we get yellow orange. And if we mix a little bit more red, then we get the red orange. Same thing as we go all the way around. And so each one of these, we need to pay attention to it, because when we're designing our photograph, we need to think about where the colors are. So where is the yellow in this picture? Or where is the red in the photograph that I'm going to show you? Or where is the blue? Where is the white? Because if we don't pay attention to what's going on the color wheel, we get things like this. So I've got a nice picture of an in focus tulip. I've got nice blown out background all in the back. I've got the right shutter speed because my tulip is all nice and sharp and clear. So I've used the right shutter speed for it. But you notice that in my background, I have all that white. And then I have the red and the yellow. So primary colors. So I've got white, red, and yellow in the very back of the photograph. And then go back at the color wheel and look where my purple is. My purple is all the way over here. And on top of that, I don't have a bright purple. I have a dark purple in that photograph. So what ends up happening in a photograph like that is we work a long time and we work really hard and we get that tripod exactly where we want it to be and we get the focus point exactly where we want it to be and we get totally engrossed in that photograph. And then later on we look at it and we just look at it and go, something's wrong. And you don't know what's wrong maybe. But what's wrong is that your eye is just bouncing all over the background and never comes to that tulip in the front. So what color tulip should I have had? What do you think? No right or wrong answer. What color tulip should we have had? Amanda, what do you think?
A white
A
or
white?
or red or yellow.
Yeah,
Red.
yeah, yeah,
Red. Mhm.
yeah. Red would have gone really well. Yeah, yeah. Any other opinions on this one? So we needed something that was in better color harmony. Now, the good thing in nature is that most of the time the colors are in harmony. You know, we most of the time we go out and we're photographing in a wildflower field with butterflies, you're going to find that everything is in color harmony. But when we get into a man-made garden like this, it might look good, but it's not going to create a really nice photograph if we mix it like this. And then in flower photography, many times we're creating artificial backgrounds and we're adding artificial backgrounds. So now if we throw in an artificial background and our artificial background's not in harmony with our flower, we've thrown everything off. So we've got to keep in mind that color wheel. And I gave you where that one came from, by the way. We'll talk about this website just a little bit more, but it's down there on the very bottom at sensationalcolor.com. We'll talk about this website just a little bit more as we go along. But when you're designing your photograph, you might think about, well, is my background in color harmony with the rest of my subjects? And is the eye going to be drawn away by that stray little flower back there in the background? So that little stray white flower might draw the eye away from the photograph that you're trying to create. So we got to look at the whole thing. We got to scan the entire image and not just make sure that the f-stop's right and the shutter speed's right and everything's out of focus and in focus. We've got to make sure that we've got that color harmony as well that's going through the image. So observations on this before I leave it?
Is there anything you could do like in like editing to help with this photo? So you really wanted to save it?
You could maybe turn it into a black and white. But then the background, those white flowers are still going to pop the eye back there.
Yeah.
So you could do that. You could maybe clone stamp some of those little whites away. But it's going to be really hard to try to save it.
Yeah, a lot of work. Yeah.
A lot of work. Yeah, to try to save it because the structure of it is wrong. And it doesn't happen too often. But that's why it was good to save this one. It was like, oh, look, a great illustration, And I spent a lot of time, trying to get it to work and trying to get the right background and all that other stuff. But it doesn't come out, doesn't work. It just distracts from it. So some tools that we can use. And Henry, are you still there with me?
I am. I don't know if
Okay.
I'm visible, but I'm here.
That's good. As long as you're still there, that's what counts. Okay. So some tools, and you'll see on your handout that unfortunately most of this handout is a whole lot of tools, but I want to show you some gadgets that we can use in flower photography. How many of y'all have a reflector?
I do.
So Henry's got one. Okay. Susan's
I've got one. Yeah.
No, y'all don't have one. Okay. So this is a 5-in-1 reflector. Costs $29 on Amazon. And the neat thing about this reflector is it has a gold side and a silver side, as well as a diffuser. So that white disc down that's in the front of the black one is a diffuser. So this reflector is a big round disc. And by the way, buy the 24-inch, don't buy the 48-inch. The 48-inch is really, really big. Get the 24-inch. So it's about 2 feet across. And what you do is to take it out of its case, it comes in a case about this big. You unfold it and it springs out like your windshield screen on your car, and turns into a circle. Then to fold it back up, you just twist it, put it back in its little case. By having the diffuser in the middle, and then on the case is silver on one side and gold on the other side. So you can use either silver, or you can use gold, or you can use the black for certain things, and then the diffuser for certain things. So here's a gladiola, and I've just used gladiolas that came in the bouquet as the background. That way I'm sure that everything's got color harmony to it. And then it's got that annoying shadow through there. So you may not even notice that shadow until it dawns on you that it's there. And once it dawns on you that it's there, you can't turn loose of it. So once I told you the shadow was there, that's it. You're probably stuck on the shadow. But if I use the reflector, then I can reflect light onto the gladiola. And now I got rid of that shadow. So this reflector just allows me to get rid of those harsh shadows by reflecting silver light on it. You can reflect gold light as well. So you can reflect silver light as well as gold light. And if you're going to do the gold light, realize that it looks really, really good to your eye. But unless you've got the right flower, that gold light may not be the right color. So in this sort of fuchsia type color flower, it probably would have been better just to stick with the silver instead of going with the gold. So it looks good to your eye, but don't get sucked into thinking that this is going to look good on the finished photograph, because then once again, we won't be able to try to fix it later on. It'll be difficult to fix it later on. But let me show you how you use reflectors out in the field. Now, remember, this 5-in-1 reflector has one disc that's got silver on one side, and then it's got gold on the other side. If I take the case off, it's a diffuser, so it allows me to put it between my subject and the sun to soften the shadows. So on this prickly pear cactus, I've got all these nasty shadows all over the place. So I'm going to put the gold reflector on one side of it. And now go back to the first photograph. See the gold that's now reflected up on the top of those prickly pears of the tunas? Those purple things are called tunas. So go back to no reflection, and now with the reflection. So you see how the gold's being reflected up there on top of it? And then this is the diffusion panel. So this is the center out of the reflector. So I've taken the case off, and this is the center of it. And you notice how pretty and soft it is now that I've taken away all the shadows. Go all the way back, and look how soft that is now that I've put that between the cactus and the sun. So we're almost ready to go now. And then here, it's a close-up photograph of that. So now I've softened those shadows on that cactus using the diffuser out of the 5-in-1 reflector. So it's looking pretty good. But if I put the gold back and the diffuser over on the right, so I've left the diffuser over on the right, now I've put the gold back. Obviously, you need somebody to hold these things for you. Okay, so you need a little assistant there. So now I've got a diffuser on one side and a gold reflector on the other side on the left. And now I've added the silver reflector on the right and left the gold reflector on the left. So this is looking good, but it's a little on the bright side on the right-hand side. So now we've kind of taken some of that gold off and put the silver back. So the silver's now on the right-hand side, and the diffuser is over, the silver's on the left and the diffuser is on the right side. Is that the same sides for you all? when I'm right and left?
I think so, yeah.
You think
Yeah.
so? Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure. I'm not sure if it's flipped or not. And then kind of back off the white a little bit. So back off that silver reflector, because look how bright that silver reflector can get. Now, these
Yeah.
reflectors, by the way, are just inches away from the subject. Closer you get to them, the more intense they become. And then back it off just a little bit, and then add a little bit more gold back in there.
Mm.
So you see how far we've come since the very beginning by just adding a diffuser on one side to block the sun, and then finding the right color of reflector to use, and then take the reflector back just a little bit. So there's the reflector back just a little bit. So you've got a lot of play that you can do in that. And then this is moving the diffuser even closer. So it's almost adding a glow. So years ago, I had my portrait done by a friend, and he nearly covered my head in reflectors and diffusers against a window. So I was just glowing. So the closer your diffuser gets, it's between you and the sun over on the right-hand side. The closer the diffuser that gets, the more that light is just made to glow. And then now the silver is going over on that diffuser, so we're getting even more glow going on. So this stuff's just absolutely beautiful once you get it working out in the field. And it just looks really good. So a 5-in-1 reflector, $29.95 from Amazon. You can have one, I'm sure, in a couple of days in your house. They work really, really well. And you're going to use them for all kinds of stuff. Portrait photography, you're going to use them for macro photography. They're just a great light source. So fairly inexpensive. So here's the final photograph, a golden reflector on the left-hand side and a diffuser over on the right-hand side. So you might need to do the same thing that I did. You might need to work through it to find exactly where the right sweet spot is. But the product works really well. It makes it very nice. Yeah. Susan, question?
No.
No. Okay. Yeah. So any questions about the reflector?
What size are the reflectors?
The
24 inch?
Yeah, 24 inches this big, and it's
Okay.
perfect. Don't get the
Okay.
48 inch because it's just way too big. And
Right.
and if there's any sort of wind, it's just going to blow away. So
Okay.
you can work a 24-inch reflector by yourself.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it does just fine. The little teeny ones, the 8-inch or 4-inch or something like that, they're just too small. Yeah, just go ahead and get you a 24-inch. Now, continuing on under gadgets, this is what's called a plant. Anybody have any of these?
Yes.
You've got some, Susan, you got some, Henry?
Yes, I
Okay,
do.
good.
One, yes.
These things are so useful. You will be surprised what uses these things have. These are all made by the Wimberley Company. And you see it's just a really nice plastic reticulating arm. And if it ever breaks, you just pop it. It doesn't break. You just pop it back in. And on one end, it's got like this big, huge clamp. And that's a pretty good, sturdy clamp. I find that I clamp this to tables a lot. And then here's what's called a plamp, P-L-A-M-P. And it is nice and soft, not too hard. And you can put a flower stem right in the middle there. They make these even with a little smaller groove in them so that you can put small stems in there. There's also, and then it's padded, so it's not going to cut into your flower stem. So this is called a plamp, P-L-A-M-P, okay? Except when you go to the Wimberley Company, there's a ton of them. So it helps to just do some shopping. So in this photograph, if you need to move me around, you can. If you need to move, our pictures around. Here's one of the plamps that has a screwdriver on the end of it. You stab a screwdriver in it, and this stabs into the ground. So that's one type of plamp. I tried it on wildflowers, by the way, and most of the time wildflower fields are so hard that you can't get that screwdriver thing down into the dirt. It works well around flower beds, but sometimes, natural earth is just really, really tough. So this is one plamp, and I've given you all these different kinds of plamps in your handout so that you'll have them. So you see here, I've got one clamp clamped to my tripod leg. And then here's the little clampy thing that I showed you, and it's holding my reflector in place. And then to hold my azalea in place, I've got another clamp, and that's that screwdriver that's going into the soil. I don't think you can see it right here, but there's even this little bar that attaches to go a little bit further along. So there's these little extensions that they have for them. And let me see if I can find this on your handout real quick so I can send you to the right thing. Yeah, it's called the Wimberley. It's at the end of all the text, and it's the first photograph that you come to of the Wimberley clamps. And this little teeny weeny extension that's right in there is the clamp extension rod, so that you can clamp onto it, and then it's a little bitty extension rod. So as you see in your handout, I've given you all different kinds of clamps and from the Wimberley company. There's all kinds of little extensions. They have them also to put your flash on your camera and that type stuff. On the third page of the pictures, you'll see the one that has the screwdriver in it, and you see that the screwdriver comes out. So you see that there's all different kinds of different clamps that you can use from the Wimberley company. If you go to the Wimberley website, so it's right on the little, in one of the photographs. If you go to the Wimberley website, they also have a lot of scratched indents, so you can get them at cheaper price. I ended up now, I've just got an entire little Tupperware box of these things, because every once in a while I decide that I need a new one and I'll go buy it. I'll buy it. And I don't have any problem buying the ones that don't have a package on them or the ones that are scratched. So if I can get a good deal on it, then I will. And I use these in macro photography. I use them in my super close-up photography. I use them all, hummingbird photography. I use them all the time. Susan, do you find the same thing? Do you use these?
Yeah, I've used them a lot this week.
Yeah. Working on your
Yes.
macro photography.
Yeah.
Yeah. Henry, do you find that you use them?
I did, and then I haven't used them for a long time.
So now you're going to bring them out, huh?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Good. They're good. They're an extra hand that just allows you to do some of this photography without having to have somebody else holding something for you. So I like these. And as I said, I have a little Tupperware tub full of them because I decide I need a new one, or, I win it at a camera club or something like that. So I just have a whole little tub of these little guys now, and they're good. They're very well made. Questions on these before I leave them? No. And once again, not very expensive. So, a nice little gadget that you can have that doesn't cost you an arm and a leg, but you definitely will use it. And then another little gadget that becomes kind of interesting, and Lexi and Susan, I told you all about this in macro class as well. These are extension tubes and close-up filters. So extension tubes are hollow tubes that you put between your camera and your lens. And when you use one of these extension tubes, it halves or quarters the minimum focusing distance. So where your lens says you can't go more than 12 inches away from your subject, if you put this big extension tube on it, between the lens and the camera, you can probably go 6 inches, if not 4 inches. Anybody have extension tubes? Yeah, Amanda, you've got them?
Yes.
Henry, you got them too?
Kathy, do you use those with a macro lens?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because I always found that my macro lens didn't focus as close as I wanted it to. A macro lens only focuses to a foot,
Okay.
but my 24 to 105 millimeter lens focuses to 9 inches. I can get closer with my 24 to 105 than I can with my macro.
Wow.
So with my macro lens, I always felt like I couldn't get as close as I wanted to get. So I used extension tubes on it all the time. The extension tubes, by the way, we don't have them yet for mirrorless cameras, except in the Kinko. But yet the extension tubes, if you're still using a digital SLR, you can get these from Canon or Kinko. Nikon doesn't make them anymore. In Canon, they come in a 25 and a 12. You see each one of those, the 25 is the thick one and the 12 is the thinner one. Put them together and that becomes 36. And if you put them together, then you can really just lay your lens, you're right in the flower because your minimum focusing distance is very, very small at that point. Close-up lens, on the other hand, here's one right here. Close-up lens, you buy this for the millimeter of your lens. So if the lens, your favorite lens to use is a 72 opening, then you buy this for a 72 opening. And it just screws onto the front of your lens. Even though it's called a lens, it's really a filter. But you notice that it's very heavy and it's very fat. It's thick. That's because this is edge to edge, has edge to edge sharpness. So it's called a close-up lens. And you just screw it onto the front of your lens. So it doesn't matter whether you're using Olympus or Sony or Fuji or Canon or Nikon, because all it is it's just for the opening of your lens. Canon makes these. Nikon quit making them years ago, and the Canon factory was destroyed during the Japanese tsunami. But they are for sale now on eBay, and I think somebody just did a warehouse sale in Japan, and somebody's now selling them on eBay. So we would look at them on eBay. Don't worry if you don't have a Canon camera, it's just the opening of the lens. So whether your opening of your favorite lens is 72 or 67 or whatever, that's what your close-up filter is. This is also, let me make sure that I'm showing you this one also. There you go. And it's now going to be backwards, but it's called a ACHROMAT macro by MARUMI. And I tested it and it's just as good as the Canon or the Nikon. So it's, once again, it is a MARUMI close-up filter. And you just screw it onto the front of your lens. And now you can get closer than what you could before. So you can also use an extension tube and a close-up filter. And once again, just lay your lens right in the center of the flower and photograph super, super close up. Anytime we're out in the garden and I hook this up on somebody's camera and they look through the lens and I hear them gasp, I know that they are now looking at something super, super magnified. So the extension tubes work better on a zoom lens than they do on a fixed lens, because with a zoom lens, you can zoom with the camera on a tripod and find the place where everything's in focus. If you used it on a fixed lens, you've got to move the camera in and out to find out where your focus point is. And once you learn where that is, then you kind of just do it by reflex, so you don't have to worry about it. But it's a little hard to get the lens in focus the first time around, because if you're using a zoom, you have to zoom in and out to try to figure out where the sweet spot is based on your distance from the flower. And if you've got a fixed lens, like Henry, you were asking me about maybe the 105 macro, there's one spot when you move the camera in and out, if you have the tubes on or the close-up filter, that's in focus.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So it's a little harder, it's a little harder on a fixed lens, but once you get it, then you just automatically go to that distance.
But it's a 45 macro, but it's on a mirrorless, so I don't know if that's
So that 45 macro, you're going to have a wider field of view than you
Okay.
would at the 105. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Probably pretty easy at 45.
Okay.
And the neat thing about these extension tubes and the close-up filters, now, once again, remember that for the mirrorless, only Kenko, Kenko makes these extension tubes right now. So the better investment if you're mirrorless might be for the close-up lens, you know, to put it in the front of your lens. But here, for instance, is a Peony with an extension tube on the back of the lens and a close-up filter on the front of the lens. And now I can just get right inside the Peony. So that's what the extension tube on the back and the close-up filter on the front look like. And then here's an iris extension tube on the back, close-up filter on the front, just setting it. And you know, you're doing such high magnification now that you've got to be on a tripod to keep this nice and steady. And then here's a little flower down in Costa Rica. And once again, just you can put the lens almost in the center of the flower with the extension tube and the close-up filter. So it makes it fun. But this is my wide angle lens, 16 to 35. It focuses to 11 inches. If I add an extension tube to it, that's that one little tube. If I add the extension tube to it, then now I can get much closer than I could originally. So I'm using a wide angle lens, 16 millimeter, which is your landscape lens. And now I'm photographing flowers with it. So excuse me, went the wrong direction. And here's the 16 to 35 millimeter lens. Once again, the wide angle lens. I've got a 12 extension tube on it and the close-up filter on it. So that gives me that, you know, that wonderful blurring kind of along the edges of it, because it's got a very, very shallow depth of field at this point. But think about it, that this is a wide angle lens that we're using for macro photography in the garden. And it just makes it a fun lens. So Henry, on that 45 millimeter that you have, you could put the close-up filter on the front and get even closer.
Great. No, that'll work.
Yeah. How close can you get with that lens, Henry? Do you remember the 45 millimeter?
It's been, I've never felt that I got close enough.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I've always felt with my macro lenses. I just don't feel like I get as close as I want to get. Yeah.
So,
Oh.
well, let's see. It's got, well, I don't know if I'm looking at the right thing. Sorry. It says full and limit.
Yeah, that's the focus. Yeah. But there should be a little number on it somewhere that might even have a tulip next to it or something like that.
Boy.
No.
It says 1.28 and then ASPH. That's not
Yeah.
it.
No. That's the construction of the lens. You're
Right.
going to find out in your homework. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
You'll find out how close you can get with your homework. Okay.
Yeah, I just don't see it written. Okay.
That's okay. That's okay. And then this is once again playing around with that same wide angle lens, same bloom. And it just allows me to you know, get just a little bit different. So this is what it looks like without anything on it. This is what it looks like with the extension tube and the close-up filter. And then this is what it looks like with the extension tube on the back, so we can get closer. So these are nice because you can just, any lens you own becomes a macro lens, and you can start doing different things with that lens. Anybody have lens babies, or anybody played with lens babies?
I have a friend who just let me borrow her
Oh,
Velvet 56. I haven't even tried it yet.
oh,
but
very good. But you get to try it. Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Anybody else tried the lens babies? No. So the lens babies are fairly inexpensive lenses, but they're not cheap. You know, they can still be a somewhat good dollar investment. Some of them can go into the $500 and $700. but they give different looks. So they have a look like a broken lens. They have a look like an old-timey camera. And then this Velvet is known for its really, really sort of velvety appearance because it's called Velvet. So it gives this kind of glowing appearance to your macro work. And you notice over here on the side, I didn't quite get it in there, but it's telling you how close that it'll focus. So it'll focus up to 5 inches, and it'll do 1 to 2 macro, meaning half life size. And then it has an f-stop that goes all the way down to 1.6. So that means you can get some really, really blurred background with it. But then you got to watch it because that depth of field's not going to be very much at 56 millimeters. So these lens babies are an interesting lens to play with. Find a friend that'll let you borrow one, or maybe you rent one before you actually invest in it. I bought one time and it was non-autofocus, and I just moved into the mirrorless system. And so I really didn't want to give up my autofocus. So I ended up sending it back. But there are some people out there who do amazing work with these lenses, and they are fun to play with. But once again, just something that's just a little bit different to give you a little bit different appearance. Those of you that blur your backgrounds on Zoom, the Velvet will give you really, really sweet blurred out backgrounds. So it gives you a really nice look to your photographs. So questions about gadgets? Or anything else that we would use right now in the beginnings to photograph flowers? No? Okay. So in your homework assignment, so now you've got homework, and you'll need to get your work to me by at least, hopefully, Sunday evening next week. If you're running late, don't stress. Just send me an email, and if I can, I'll take your work. So don't stress about it. But in your homework assignment, one of the things I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to find a favorite or a famous painting of flowers. And then I would like you to recreate that famous painting. So here's the Georgia O'Keeffe painting, and this was done by Laura in a previous class. So she took this painting and did a recreation of it pretty darn good, like that. So obviously choose flowers that you have the ability to get. Okay. Here's another one. This is one of the Van Goghs, and this is the sunflowers that I showed you just a little bit ago. And then this one is what another student created. So she found the sunflowers at the grocery store, and she put them in the microwave to dry them. That's how she got the wilted sunflowers. And then she went all over the house trying to find that color of blue. And this is her bathroom mat, the mat in her bathroom. So you might have to do a little bit of digging, or you might have to do a little bit of playing, or you might have to do a little bit of adventurous work. But your homework assignment is to, first of all, get as close as you can with each lens that you own. So Lexi, you get to redo that assignment, okay? So, try to keep this, try to keep the flower, or, whatever you're doing, the flower, you might want to bring it inside so you don't have to deal with the wind, and then work with each one of the lenses that you own. So get as close as you can with each lens that you own. Take a photo of the same flower with each lens that you own, each time getting as close as you can. So keep the same flower and then photograph it with each one of your lenses, always getting as close as you possibly can. So that means you're going to get a slightly different a photograph every single time, because your lens is going to have a different field of view. Now, Lexi, you've got that one-piece unit, right? Or does your camera have lenses that come on and off?
My camera has lenses that come on and off.
Okay, very good. Very good. So you'll use each one of the lenses that you have on that one. And then if you don't have a lot of lenses, and if you don't have a lot of lenses, then feel free to, if you have a 24 to 105, do this at 24 and do this at 105. So if you don't have a lot of lenses, feel free to zoom your lenses if that'll help. And if you do have a whole lot of lenses, then don't do any more than 5 or 6. Okay. We don't need to see every single lens that you own, but you know, keep it reasonable. So 5 or 6 photos, as close as you can possibly get of the same flower. Then I would like you to recreate a famous floral painting or photograph. And then you're going to submit a screen capture or a screen grab of the famous picture and then the one that you recreated. Questions? And then this is how you're going to submit them to me. So you're going to go ahead and process and then save as a JPEG. So if you're shooting in RAW, go ahead and do your basic processing and then save it as a JPEG and then send me the JPEG. You're going to resize your photos to 1280 pixels on the longest side at 96 DPI. If you don't know how to resize, I have a video on my YouTube channel to show you how to do it. So just the Kathy Adams Clark YouTube channel, there's a video to show you how to resize your photographs. Name your photographs with your first name. So put your first name in there, underscore, and then fill in the blanks, whatever, you know, that photograph was. And if you can, 5 p.m. the day before class, so that would be Sunday evening, upload it. I will send you tomorrow a link to my Dropbox, and you can upload your photos to my Dropbox. If you already have a Dropbox or you have a WeTransfer or something like that, feel free to send me a link and just tell me that you put your pictures in your own. So you can use my Dropbox, you can use yours, just, you know, whichever one you want. And let me know if you're running late. And if you are running late, I'll try to accommodate you as much as possible. And then I'll put your photos into a PowerPoint presentation and we'll discuss them during class. And this gives you a good chance to say, you know, this was driving me crazy. I was, it was causing me lots of grief to do this or whatever. Or you can talk about your great successes, or I didn't know my lens would get this close and now I'm thrilled. And then I can also ask questions and critique and offer feedback on them as well. So it's a good chance that we get to share all of your photos together with the rest of the class. And everybody's doing it together, so you can share your photos just like everybody else. Okay. Questions?
Just a general.
Sure.
I used to try to do flower photography out of Mercer Arboretum, but
Yes.
now they don't allow flashes and tripods or anything. Any suggestions about good places in the Houston area to do flower photography?
You know, Henry, Mercer used to be a beautiful place, wasn't it? Because we could go in there and photograph for hours. You know, we can't go so much there, but most now of the county parks, so Kleb Woods, for instance, Terry Hershey parks, most of the county parks here in the Houston area have gone ahead and put in native plant gardens and, butterfly gardens. And some of them even have really pretty flower beds in them. So you might even check just your local park to see what you've got.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Also, I don't think that the botanical garden here in Houston has restricted tripod use yet.
They did.
They did already.
Yeah.
Okay. So it would be find a garden that's hospitable. Yeah. There is also a place, and I know, Amanda, you're up in the Dallas area, right? So
Right.
I don't want to speak just solely about Houston. Jennifer, where are you? You're in the Houston area?
I'm in, yes, it's Houston area, but it's a small town outside of Houston.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in Dallas, you've got botanic gardens as well. So you should be able to have something. Do they let y'all bring tripods in?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. Okay, good. So you've got the Botanic Gardens there. In the Houston area, we have Enchanted Forest and Enchanted Gardens. It's a garden center, but it's built through the forest in the Katy area, Enchanted Gardens and Enchanted Forest. And I'll go in there with my camera slung around my shoulder. I don't think they really want you to use a tripod, but I don't think they really care either. And while I'm shopping for plants, I'll also photograph like crazy. And the way that they lay out all of these different planting arrangements and pots and, wrought iron cats next to the pots. It's just a charming place to photograph. It's Enchanted Gardens and Enchanted Forest, two different nurseries. And then up in the Tomball area, Arbor Gate, it does the same thing. They just have all these really cool little gardens set up that are really nice to photograph.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we just have to find our place
Yes.
and be good neighbors. Don't clog the trail with our tripods, because then people get mad at us. It irritates me because a tripod takes up no more room than a stroller, but strollers are allowed, but tripods aren't. So, we just have to watch it. Sometimes photographers can be inhospitable to other people. Yeah. Other questions? Nope. So you have your assignment for next week. So I am going to stop sharing my screen right now. There we go. And then I will stop the recording in just a few moments. And the recording I will share with you tomorrow morning. And then that means you can watch it over and over and over again if there's anything that you might have missed. And then tomorrow I'll also send you an email, and it'll have a link to my Dropbox and then the log on for next class next week. Questions? Nope. Okay. Thank you very much for coming tonight, and I look forward to seeing your homework next week. Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks for class.
Bye-bye.